Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to our Sunday gathering for Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut each and every week. We really appreciate you guys being here with us. Yes, Alpod has a new baby. That's so exciting. Howard, what do you want to tell us about that? What do you know?
Not much. It's not yet confirmed by the Center for Whale Research, but it's a good photo, and that's evidence from a naturalist from Tofino, which is basically the Pacific Ocean. It's way out on the coast of British Columbia, Vancouver Island. So we're waiting for another sighting or two, and we're not confirmed about who the mom is. It was with the L77 Natural Line, who has two other kids, one of whom is a female about 11 years old. So it's possible, not likely, but could be babies. We don't know who's the mom for sure. So we're waiting to get confirmation and have our baby shower.
Well, that's really cool because they're all gathering. So that's really exciting. Thanks for giving us a summary. I saw that come up last couple of days, and that's just really exciting. I want to introduce our guest for today, and then we'll do some quick check-ins from everyone else. But Charles Vinnick, thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking time to come and hang out with the Toki bunch, and as we continue to gather on her journey. So let's do quick check-ins real quick. Christina, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thanks for coming, Charles. Appreciate it. And yeah.
Yes, welcome. Deb Cruz?
Top of the morning, afternoon, evening to y'all.
Ma, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Happy to be here. And thanks, Charles, for joining our pod.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Stephanie and Casey, how are you?
Happy Sunday to all from Minnesota. Thanks, Charles, for joining us today. Mwah.
Deborah?
Hi, Charles. Happy to see you again. Just happy to be here. Open heart, open mind. Ready to listen. Thank you.
And Alejandro?
Thank you, Charles, for showing us today. This was a big surprise. Nobody knew anything about that until this minute.
Well, neither
So
did
thank
I,
you.
so that's good. We're all even.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. And Howard, anything you want to say before we kick this off?
Just very good to see you, Charles. And in terms of whale updates, in addition to hoping to see the new L-Pod baby someday soon, J-Pod is in the hood. J-Pod has been reported somewhere around the San Juan, so we're looking for more surprises from them. Who knows?
That's really awesome. Right on. Well, let's just kick it off because I know. Let me put Charles here in the middle. Charles, how's Toki?
Well, I just checked because you had asked me to join, and so I checked before I got on. A number of people obviously are there. She's doing great. She looks terrific. She is. And what's really interesting, I mean, this week we had a couple of people who are part of our training and enrichment team, one particularly who hadn't been there in quite a while, another who hadn't been there in a few weeks. And to hear them talk about change from the past is what really helps, because those of our team who are there every day, just like with any of us, you don't see the incremental changes if you're seeing or you're with someone every day. So when they're not there with her every day, they see her as more active, more energetic, engaged with her caregivers even more than she was, although she's always engaged with her caregivers. That's not anything new. She's, and those of you who've been there, who've seen her over the years, who know her, she's very gentle. She's a really gentle animal, and that's not true with every orca in every facility. She is special in that way and special in every way. Okay, I'm going to jump off for a moment. I will be back. Just bear with me.
You're muted, Annette.
Well, there we go. All right. So we'll continue to talk about the whales there at Howard but I mean, already, gosh, he's said two things. And that's really hopeful and really nice to hear. And it's true, when you're with someone every day, you don't see the changes. So that's really cool to hear
Right.
that.
So that was already really good news right there. Just that even above and beyond her normal gregariousness, her flirtatiousness, she does somehow reach out to people when they're around her, and if they even if they're not looking at her, she'll get their attention and engage, and that's just in her nature. And I'm sure it's all the more so if she's with her real family. So I mean that's a part of her personality. So really good to hear, and that her health and everything are looking good. So glad about that. I don't have any further updates except to tell you that the Center for Whale Research is on the water. They're out there. I don't know if they're with JPod yet, but if not, they're on their way. And so we'll be hearing more and probably having photos and see where they go and what they're doing. So this is exciting. It's great. It's kind of like the old days when JPod would come in. By this time of year, all three pods, I'm talking 10 years ago, and before that, it was normal for all three pods to come in pretty much every day all summer, from early June right through September, to come up and down the west side of San Juan Island and do a big circle around the whole San Juan Islands, and just do a whole lot of foraging around there. So it's nice to see JPod come back in, and maybe they'll bring K's and L's in too, So today could have some surprises.
I feel like it's time for another super
Oh,
pod.
I was just reminded by my reminder
Hi, Susan.
that
Susan.
it is Orca month. This is Orca month, Orca Action Month, as it's been re-tagged, which is great, because that means do something for the whales. And what we're doing on the 28th is in conjunction with the Center for Whale Research. Orca Network is holding the Glory Whales of Yesteryear event, which will be partly virtual recorded and partly live. But well, okay, I'm told it's going to be an all virtual event.
Very cool.
And what are the times of it? I'm asking.
6 to 7:30.
From 6 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific. So,
It's on our website.
and it's on our website, on our Orca Network community page, for sure.
And Orca Month.
And on the orcamonth.org page and website. So it's out in several places. And you'll hear from people who were with the whales in yesteryear. We found some old veterans that saw whales, were with them, were part of the research efforts, and had some very momentous and memorable moments with the whales, and will be telling their stories from back 20, 30 years ago. Some whales no longer with us, some still are, but they'll be relating the stories that were revelations to them, that really woke them up to the just amazing whales that we have around here. So that should be really interesting and a lot of fun.
That's Wednesday, you said, right? The 28th?
That's yes,
Okay.
Wednesday, 28th. Yep.
Very cool. And Deb Cruz had the link up there.
Yeah, and we'll lead
It's
off.
also,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
it's a different subject, but it has to do with Orca Month. You go.
Let's finish up the Orca Month conversation, get back to Charles, and then we can talk about any other updates after. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say that we'll start out with Ken a video of Ken reading from his logbook from April 8th, 1976, when he first found whales as the start of Orca survey in 76. So he'll be telling that story, and there's some revelations in that.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm
Powerful.
done.
And Howie, is that part of what you're thinking? Is that I'm coming in, I'm tuning back in late because I was gone for a while. But is that SuperPod or?
No, this is Orca Action Month, and our Orca Network, in conjunction with Center for Whale Research event, will be Wednesday, the 28th. And it will be an hour and a half of people's stories from 20 or 30 or more years ago. And it will lead off with Ken reading from his logbook from 76.
Great. And then you're also going to be doing some things with that at SuperPod, correct?
Correct. On the 18th and 19th, a tribute to Ken on the 18th, along with Kelly. And then on the 19th, the Toki update, which will not really be an update. It'll be a post date, which I'm actually going to talk about Ken's pre-proposal from 1995, which has been out there, ever since.
Sure. Of course.
But probably not well known. And I think he had some good material in that can be relevant today. So I'm going to bring that out.
Yeah, good. And we can do something together at SuperPod about present too. So we'll just figure that out.
Great. Looking forward.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thanks.
sorry about jumping off, but it's useful that I did, in the sense of that is what every day is like, and almost every hour, with respect to what we're doing, because it is 24/7 to be managing and trying to work to do everything we can to bring Toki home. So that was a phone call specifically about, I don't know, 4 or 5 things that are coming up in the next 6-7 days and on into the beginning of July. That was a change in schedule that someone needed to alert me to. Well, Pridham, in that case, Pridham needed to alert me to, that will impact, I don't know, 4 or 5 of the next flights that I have. So anyway, it just shows you that's what goes on, every day. So that's the fact that I jumped off is not surprising. I jump off of half of the phone calls I'm on for the same reason. In any case, so what we were talking about is people who haven't seen Toki in a while on our training staff, because we have some of the enrichment people who come in for short periods of time to provide specific input into enrichment for her. One of those people was there for Friday and Saturday, part of today. Another one has been there for about a week. And hearing what they say as what looks different from the last time they were there is, I think, really instructive about how well she's doing. So I'm always interested in their views, just as I'm interested in when Tom Reederson, he's not there all the time. He is our lead vet for her, along with Jim McBain and Stephanie Norman. But Jim and Stephanie are there roughly once a month. Tom is there roughly every 7-8 days and can be there longer if there's a need whenever we need it. So those people have really good, helpful data about how she's doing and how she's changing and whether she looks better, stronger, what have you. And what I think we see is generally a consistent upward path. Now, there are days when she has a tough day. She had one day last week, she had what looked like what you or I might think of as a stomach ache. She was not as comfortable. So, okay, the vets, Tom happened to be there that day, and had he not been there, I would have asked him to go. And he will show up within 24 hours from anywhere that he is if we ask. So he's that much available and committed to her. And there's also Jessica Camoli, who is the on-site vet at Miami Seaquarium. She's always available, but not as knowledgeable about cetaceans as is Tom, Jim McBain, Stephanie, and the like. So that's the reason we move those people in and out all the time. And right now, everything looks good. She still does have Tom. Tom does not every week, but every other week. He tends to do an ultrasound, and he's looking for, the inflammation in her lungs, in the respiratory area, to see how that's changed. And, the good news is that hasn't changed over the last 6, 8, 10 months. So it's not growing. Now, it also hasn't disappeared. That's the bad side of that. But it's not getting worse. It is something, and we don't know, and they don't know, the vets, how long she's had it. She may have had this for 10 years. We've known it for 2. Tom's known about it since he started when he was first hired by Palace Entertainment as a consulting vet. He started observing that. Okay, but how long has it been there? What's the impact on her welfare and her health? And so, she is still on the antibiotic. We have reduced from last October the level of dosage by 1/3. Now, it'd be great to reduce it completely, and that's certainly the goal, but we're not there. And you don't do it in thirds. You do it in small increments, as you do with all of her supplements and the like, as we try to reduce more and more of them over time. So that's always going on every day. But the good news is she looks great. I look to try to bring some pictures, and we'll talk about pictures in a minute. And I can't quite pull that off yet. But if I were to show you pictures, you would all be cheering. There's no question. I mean, this is a whale who looks terrific. Now, why can't I show you a picture? Okay, what's going on with the pictures? Same thing's been going on with the pictures for the last, since March of 2022. That's when the Dolphin Company took over custody of Toki and became the owners and managers of the Miami Seaquarium. Their license for exhibition does not include Toki. Doesn't include Li'i, the white-sided dolphin, either. Now, what that means is that if they show any imagery of her, the Department of Agriculture Animal Plant Health Inspection Service considers that to be exhibition, and therefore it's contrary to the license they hold. So if you remember back when we were doing the conference in December of 2022, we went to USDA and said, look, we want to show a video and pictures of Toki because people want to know how she's doing. And they said, no. And we said, well, why not? And they said, well, that's what we've said Miami Seaquarium can't do under their exhibition license. Well, we're not, Friends of Toki isn't under that license. So why does that apply to us? So we are dealing with that question from a legal perspective with USDA because we don't think it applies to us. And if everybody and their brother who independently flies a drone over the seaquarium at any time and then posts that picture, why can they do that? And we, and frankly, even Miami Seaquarium, not show a picture of a healthy whale and call high quality water? Because everybody else can show it at any angle of the sun. And depending on where your drone is, the angle of the sun will impact the way the water looks. It'll impact everything else. And you're not getting an honest appraisal or view of what you're seeing. So we think it's ridiculous, as do our lawyers. And so we have now brought on board phenomenal legal support. We have consultants for the Department of Commerce. We have consultants for the Department of Agriculture. We have consultants for all of the different, call them influencers, over all of those organizations, all of those government agencies. So who would that be? Well, certainly Maria Cantwell, Senator Maria Cantwell, is the chairperson of the Commerce Committee in the Senate. So by having a relationship consulting wise with people who she works with on a daily basis. That gives us a way to create a strong communication with the oversight of the Department of Commerce and directly with the Department of Commerce. Similarly, we have kind of built a web of consultants for the federal government and the state of Washington with whom we're working daily. So that's what's going on today. We have the team in Miami Seaquarium. We have a team of people in the state of Washington with whom we're working. The governor has I don't want to call it an agency, although it probably is technically an agency, that's responsible for facilitating permits within the state of Washington. So that agency, that group, calls together all of the departments that have to opine on and approve any kinds of permits. So Department of Natural Resources is part of that. The governor's policy group is part of that. All the other agencies. That group is now already working with us. We have to make a request to them that they start this consultation process. We have to agree that we will reimburse all of their expenses in doing it. And then that starts. That has already begun. We have made that request. We have committed to paying their costs and move forward. Similarly, we've hired our own consultants for all of the permitting. And the permitting includes, when you start looking at a site, the Army Corps of Engineers, National Marine Fisheries Service on the federal side, comes back in on the state side through the Army Corps of Engineers, which is federal, for their input into any site approvals, as well as all of the state agencies. All of that process is underway. So just as an example, and I'm just one of the people, but my life is basically commuting among Miami, Washington, D.C., Washington State, and occasionally where I am now, home in California. So that's the process for me and for us as an organization. Now, critical to all of it, as you know, is of course First Nation consultation. So particularly the Lummi, but also 5 tribes that have cultural rights for fishing throughout all of the Salish Sea, throughout the San Juans. So it's not, while the Lummi have certainly been partners in this in every way and continue to be, they also help us with the rest of their brethren, for lack of a better term, their cultural connection to the rest of the tribes. All of that is critically important to site selection. So why are we today not talking about specific sites? Why am I not sharing that? Because it's really important that the public, and we are public, not get out in front of the cultural approaches for all of that to be done respectfully with each of the tribes, as well as with the government agencies, particularly Department of Natural Resources in Washington State. So one of our consultants on that is someone who was a former general counsel for the previous governor of the state of Washington. So you try to bring the people with the best connections you can possibly find for every single thing you're going to have to do. That's what we've done. It's a very different approach than, let's say, we did with Keiko, although we did some of the same with Keiko. When you hire you hire some lobbyists. That's what they are. You hire government relations people who really understand and know how to move through the processes as efficiently and effectively as possible. We've done that. And they are all part of the team. The team is very big. And that's what we'll do in every sense of the word. So we're managing that process I'm managing that process now on behalf of Friends at Toki. So that's what goes on in the background. And we want to show pictures. We want to have a social media presence. We want to have public relations presence. We want to do all of that. We don't particularly want to get ahead of the agencies saying, yeah, we understand you're doing that. But we're on the cusp of being able to do that because we cannot keep being the only people who aren't talking about it. Everybody else is talking about it. We're the ones who aren't. It's nuts. It's crazy. Makes no sense.
Thanks, Charles. And I'm just reading the comments and people are just saying, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this information because you're right. Everyone's talking about what's going on and we need to hear.
Everybody has an opinion and everybody has some level of data, but those who are closest to it are not yet sharing that information publicly, and that can't continue. It's kind of ridiculous. And we know it. Now, the good news is I don't have time to share it all. So we're going to have to hire more people. But, and we will. I mean, Jim Irsay has public relations people. He wants to share things, and he will. I mean, he will share things all the time. And that'll be one point of view. And then there'll be others. Everybody will share as much as we can. And some of it will be accurate and some of it will be less than accurate. And that's the world we're going to be living in until she's there in an enclosure in the Salish Sea. It's going to be frenetic. And that's the nature of this kind of work. And the fact that she's so well known and so popular that everybody has something to say. Now, you name a newspaper, a standard print media, they have all asked to be part of telling the story. 30 different film companies have asked to make films about this. All of that is all going on in the background and happening. Certainly, Local 10 did a broadcast from the stadium with Eduardo Albor, chairman, CEO of the Dolphin Company. Well, you can imagine everybody else wants to do the same. And so they will all get a chance to do that, but not all at once, because again, this is still a facility that is restricted in terms of access because Miami-Dade County has put limits on it for its zoning, for their zoning of buildings this age, their approval of buildings this age. Now, the stadium is not falling apart. Her tank is not decaying before our eyes. Can she be in it for a period of time? Without a doubt. There are parts of it. If you look at the slide out area that she slides out on, that has some chips that come off it. And not me, trainers and others epoxy it again to keep it from having sharp edges. But is that slide out about to fall into the pool? No. Are the sides of her pool about to fall in? No. Is there a bunch of chain link fence around the seats that's problematic? Yes. That's nuts. But it's required by Miami-Dade County to keep people from walking up there. Well, they're only allowed to have 10 people at a time there. Well, they're not going to walk up there. So we got to come to some way to deal with things that don't make sense as well as those that do. So, this is hurricane season. Everybody's asking, what's going to happen in a hurricane? Well, let me assure you, there is a full plan for everything to do with a hurricane. Now, what are the things that are most dangerous in a hurricane? It's stuff getting into her pool. That's the danger. She gets hit by something, or Lee gets hit by something, or it's an impediment to their movement inside. So that's why I mentioned the chain link fence. When there's a storm coming, that'll be removed. There's already part of the plan. That comes out. It has to. Similarly, anything that isn't tied down and not tied down by a piece of string or a rope or a zip tie, but really physically unable to be moved, it all gets moved out. What did we do this past week? There is a whole generator system that is standing by for when parts of the park lose power. Well, we just repaired everything about that generator system so that it will come on the moment we want it to, and we can adjust it, turn it on and off. We have a plan for who stays with her no matter what the storm conditions are. We have people who have housing nearby, but frankly, they're not going to back to their house. They will be on site with her 24/7 in any kind of a storm condition. And all of that is part and parcel of storm planning. It's no, I mean, in this case, Pritam Singh is tremendously helpful, as he is in everything, because he has built hotels throughout the Keys and had to put in storm planning and hurricane planning for all of those hotels. So that's what we have to do. Now, there are some real downsides. If a storm of major significance hit right there, would we need to move her? And where would you move her? Those are tremendously difficult issues because there aren't a lot of options. And I think we all know what the primary option would be. And so we have to look at all of that. We have to be prepared for everything. And that's what this is about. I have to say, working with the management of Miami Seaquarium, we're able to work like this close together. There is no lack of communication. There are no issues we're not willing to share and solve together. We're on the phone with Mr. Elbor, not every day, but 3 or 4 times a week and the like, on everything that can come up and happen. And so that's what this has become, as you all would expect. And that's what's necessary. And we don't have every answer, but we're certainly trying to ask every question and be prepared for every eventuality, no matter what it is.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Charles. If I can jump in here, this has been so informative and reassuring and helpful. Just fantastic information. Really think you've been so forthcoming with everything you could possibly tell us, and I really, really appreciate it. It's what I was hoping was going on. I assumed and I trusted, but now I'm hearing a whole lot more about it, and it's very, very encouraging to hear all that. So thank you so much for coming on and telling us all that. I just wanted to add one little sort of footnote to what you said earlier, just for everyone else's benefit, about Senator Cantwell being the chair of the committee that oversees commerce, that commerce oversees NOAA.
Right.
So
Right.
that
Yeah,
it
that's
is crucial.
Yeah, NOAA is a part of the Department of Commerce. I should have said that, but think of these things as everyone knows.
I'm just putting in a
We
parenthetical
don't all know.
phrase.
That's helpful. Very good, Howard. Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, commerce wouldn't necessarily matter, except that there lies NOAA, there lies National Marine Fisheries Service and NOAA.
Yes,
You
exactly.
would think it's in the Department of Interior. It's not.
Could
it's
have
in
been.
Commerce. Yeah, could have been, but not.
Right. So, and they are obviously very crucial, given that she is listed as an endangered animal under the ESA. NOAA has a very key interest in the permitting process and supervising the whole process. So I really think you have explained so many of the gaps about why why there's been no explanation, of a lot of this up until now. And I really appreciate that. I can see why we can't really talk about a site selection until everybody is satisfied, especially the tribes.
And even that, you can't keep a lid on anything for long.
Yeah.
And by number, we don't have a specific site. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep a lid on it. But we've got options. And under the permitting process, so we'll come back to a couple of those. The permitting process requires that you explain and have as one of your alternatives doing nothing. And why is that, the null set? Why is that not an acceptable option? So you're required to deal with that. You're required to deal with your preferred option, and you're required to have alternatives. And so that's all part of what is the requirement under both NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, and SEPA, the State Environmental Policy Act. And so all of that is part and parcel. So you can't just say, okay, here's my site. This is what I'm doing. I'm not going to look at anything else. That doesn't cut it for a permit. You've got to look at through the process, and it's quite detailed in what you're required to do in that regard and show environmentally for each of those sets. So obviously we all know why we think the current situation isn't sustainable over her lifespan, but that you have to articulate that. You've got to be able to show why that's the case, and each of these others. So that's all part of that permitting process. And then what Howard was saying is really important. I shouldn't gloss over it. And that is that the National Marine Fisheries Service would be looking at this from a standpoint of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And that's really what it would be. But she is a pre-act animal. She was captured in 1970. The Marine Mammal Protection Act became law in the US in 1972. So she is not covered by the Marine Mammal Protection Act. But by name, in 2015, she was included in the Endangered Species Act, the ESA. So she is covered by that act. But that act gets pretty complicated in terms of what you're doing with an animal who's been in captivity, and you're moving to a secured environment that is in the wild, but is not released to the wild. So why is there so much sensitivity about the whole question of release and so forth? And so I think it's important for me, and this is just a personal opinion. It's not steeped in it's not codified yet. But that is, if we were trying to, quote, get a permit to release her, I believe we could not do it. I believe we would not have any opportunity for that to be the case, in part because the southern residents are an endangered species. And so any impact on them is a take under the Endangered Species Act, and any impact on her as a member of, as someone who is in part of the Endangered Species Act could also be a take. So what's a take? It's not simply taking a whale. It's harassment. It's impacting their feeding patterns. It's impacting what they do. It's impacting their acoustics, all positive or negative. So all of those issues come into the permitting process in every way. And so this is an effort to bring her to an enclosed area where she can receive, in a natural environment, a netted environment, wild water, the same level of care she receives today and more, because the environment will be that much more enriching than anything you can do, no matter what you do in a pool, in a tank. But that's why you won't hear us, Friends of Toki, talking about release, because I don't think that gets her home. I don't think there's any chance we could do that and get her home.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I don't agree with that limitation, but I understand that that is the limitation.
Yeah, and so you know, baby steps, and they're not so baby. I mean, these are big steps.
Oh no,
you know, the only other orca who has ever been moved in something like this is Keiko 25 years ago. And so times have changed. There are all kinds of different issues. Technology is different. Everything about it is different. But this is the second Orca. For all of us who've been involved doing this stuff for however long we've all been doing it, this is only the second one. And it's critically important. I mean, it's important for her. It's important for everything she symbolizes, but it is solely about her that we're doing this. It isn't to change the world. It isn't. I mean, it may change the world. It'll certainly change our world, but it's not for that. It's about her.
Right.
And that's the way we have to continue it every single day, about her. What else occurs as a result of it is a whole different story, and not what I think is important for me to spend any time on, because this takes all the time there is, and it's so important to do as well as we can. It has risk every day. You can't predict tomorrow. We have no clue what will happen tomorrow. But with the team that's been pulled together, with support we have from Jim Irsay, we are doing things simultaneously. So we can be looking at building a netted enclosure before we have the approval to use it. That's critical for timing.
Yeah.
All that's part of it.
That's awesome.
Right.
I so much appreciate the view of Friends of Toki, as this really is about her, and it shows, because you guys are, and we say this all the time, is we know every day you guys are working, like progress is being made every day. You know, you guys are taking steps every day. You work on this all day long. And so for you to take the time out to share some of the details of that with us, I really do appreciate. Some things people want to know about are, speaking of her move, how's she doing with the stretcher? We were able to announce a couple weeks ago.
I think you've seen pictures of, if not, but there have been some pictures that people have caught. What we've done with a stretcher that's there, that we are measuring to make sure it really fits her. It's not brand new, but it's in brand new condition. Is first of all showing it to her, so she sees it. And so that's, initially it's been basically hung around the stadium and moved to different places. So she's not seeing it only in one spot or another. So she gets used to seeing it. Then you begin to put it in the water with her. We haven't yet put it in the water. That'll be coming very shortly. And then she'll play with it the way she plays with other things in the water. Then after that, you add a way to hold it, which is with its poles. And so you can begin to let her get into it. So eventually she's swimming into it of her own accord. It's not a surprise. It's not something that's stressful. And you put anything up on her sides or over her head, her eyes will get wide. If someone puts something over her head, her eyes get real big. She's not sure what that is. So you want to make sure you're doing everything to not cause any kind of stress. And so it's a slower process than you might. Stretcher's a big part of that. Eventually you want to get to practicing with a crane, picking it up, so that's also not new to her. Now, could you do things if you had to more quickly? Yes, but that would be stressful. Just as, you think back to October when she was ill, the water was lowered in B pool to the very, very little water in it, so that the training staff and others could get down there and be able to give her injections and so forth. That was very stressful for her and for everyone else. You don't want to have to be doing things that way. Now, if you have to, you can. We did in October. But that's not the goal. You want to do everything smoothly, slowly, patiently, with no stress for the people or Toki. And that's, step at a time in that sense. And that's why you have a whole team of people there who aren't the people dealing with the permitting, who aren't the people dealing with site, who aren't the people dealing with a different group of people doing that. So it could all happen at the same time, and you're trying to manage it all cohesively.
Awesome. What are some other enrichment? That's the huge one, because that's the one we all.
It's things that you wouldn't expect. I wouldn't expect. because I'm not an expert in almost any of this stuff. But, you know, I do the best I can. And it is bringing initially artificial kelp, things that look like kelp, into the water, and then moving forward to actually bringing kelp into the water, so that you're doing that, so she gets a sense of it. It's giving her variety. So there are things like, you know, ice. We use ice in a lot of ways. She gets ice for liquid, because, you know, a fish in a wild whale gets a tremendous amount of their fresh water from the water in a fish, the liquid in a fish. She's getting frozen fish. She doesn't get that. So that's why she gets ice and gelatin as part of her daily diet. Tremendous amounts of gelatin. I think we talked about that once before. We have a monopoly on Knox gelatin, and the amount we come through a day. But in any case, with ice, so you can make snow cones that are different, and they can be in different parts of the pool. They can come to her in different ways. That's part of enrichment. You want to introduce new ways that you're engaging with her. Now, you saw, I think Jim Irsay posted once some picture of some trainers in the water with her. That's pretty unusual in marine parks, but it's always been since Tillicum. I mean, it was before, but since Tillicum, that's not been what happens in marine parks. But for her, it's always been that. She's always had people in the water with her, and she's very comfortable with that, and they are. But that's a little unusual. And so when you think about where else could she be, you'd always want her to be somewhere where she can have that kind of engagement, because that's what she's always had. So again, you're trying to bring enrichment through her that way. She gets a lot of tactile, a lot of scratching, a lot of rubbing. Tail, she'll present her tail and you scratch on that, feeling it, touching it. She gets all of that. And that's part of what enrichment is about for her.
Has there been any more conversation about hydrophones, possibly playing sounds for her or sounds of her?
Yes. Yeah, without any question. Sure, you have to. Hydrophones of sounds of LPOT, sounds of the Southern Residents. Likewise, her sounds, recording it, testing it. Her hearing. We need to do more actual hearing tests for her. Because, you know, this age, a lot of orcas this age have deficiencies in hearing. So we want to understand that completely. There are people, excuse me, who have done some expert work in testing the hearing of captive cetaceans. So we're looking to have a whole procedure of that done. So what do you do? Well, she has to have some little suction cups up on her rostrum. So if the trainers are there with a bunch of suction cups, they'll hold on there just for a little bit so she gets used to it. And they'll do that for, 2 minutes. They'll do it for a minute and a half, twice a day, whatever, over some weeks before you do the test. So that the test, when you're doing it, she's comfortable staying still for a little while you do it. And it's not invasive in any way. So all of those are things you have to do in advance of proving to authorities that every aspect of this can be looked at in advance to the extent possible. Now, we might think, the heck with it. You don't need to do any of that. Let's just move on. From a permitting process, you can't. You've got to take each of these steps.
Thanks, Charles. And one of the other big things, there's a lot of big things, but one of the other big things is the water quality. That's the hot topic. I've seen some drone footage as of late that the water looks so much better. What can you tell us about that?
What I can tell you is that it is something you spend part of every day dealing with because it's a pretty complicated system. First of all, it's the parts of the system that are at the very beginning of bringing water in. You're bringing water in from Biscayne Bay. So there are all kinds of pumping systems to bring water in throughout the whole park, not just to the whale area. And the whale area is not isolated from the rest of the park. We couldn't deal with it if it was. So you're bringing water in from Biscayne Bay. And the water quality specialists, and we have, I think, one of the best. He's travels all over the world dealing with water quality in marine parks. Says what you want to do, first of all, is to have your water as close to the ambient water, the water from the bay, as you can in its normal parameters, except you certainly want your water temperature much lower because Biscayne Bay gets very warm. So our temperature we're always trying for is below 60 degrees, between 54 and 58 degrees Fahrenheit is what you're looking for. We're generally at around 57, 58 right now. We'd like to be a little lower. So how do you get lower? You have more chiller capacity handling the water and handling the transfer of water as it's moved in and out of her bay. So there's also a very large reservoir of water adjacent to her pool. That's what you cool. You cool that reservoir all the time because you're moving water from that reservoir in and out. And so what I think you've heard us talk about, we've invested roughly $550,000 in new chiller and water quality infrastructure adjacent to her pool. Now, that's not exclusive of the Miami SeaQuarium's original equipment. It supplements and replaces some of that equipment. So what's in that $550,000? 2 new chillers, a completely new ozone generating system, so you don't have to use chlorine anymore, and replacement of a lot of the media in other filters and chillers. And media is often dirt. The new way to do that is with glass beads. So we've replaced a great deal of the old chiller material, the media, with glass beads. And then you have to make sure that equipment all works and all connects to one another. So in terms of pH, in terms of salinity, in terms of clarity, and in terms of temperature, those are the primary things we're looking at on a daily basis. If you get a huge rainstorm, then you're going to have more fresh water into the system than you would otherwise. And because of the age of everything around the Miami SeaQuarium, you got a lot of more pressure on that infrastructure system because nothing drains as much as you'd like in the whole area. And while that doesn't get into her system, it just makes a mess. So whenever that happens, you've got to make sure you backwash the system more frequently. We try to do backwashes at least every other day. And we also have divers in the water 3 days a week cleaning either A pool or B pool. A pool is the larger pool. B pool is the smaller pool. They can be closed off from one another with gates, which is what you do when either side is being cleaned. And but generally they're open and she has full reign of both pools. But you clean them 3 times a week with divers with brushes. And then they have a vacuum and they vacuum out all the things that they're cleaning off, the algae and the like. But you don't want no algae. You want to have a system that is natural and has some organic material in it, but not so much organic material that the organics are overtaking the water. So it's a balancing act. It does change all the time. So there will be days where it looks darker. There will be days where the clarity is really clear. If our consultant were on here, he would be saying, you're not looking for perfectly blue water. He said, everyone wants to see perfectly blue water. That's the picture everyone wants, but you don't want necessarily that way as well. So it changes. Now, we will provide day-to-day input or weekly input about what this all is. We're getting the system, I think, is good. With all that we've invested, it's good. It's not perfect. If it were perfect, we'd have replaced everything, all the lines from Biscayne Bay all the way into the Whale Stadium. That's never going to happen. We're not going to invest that kind of money. You couldn't do it if you wanted to. And it's a whole system for the park. Eventually, they'll do that as they rebuild that park over time under the Dolphin Company. She will be in the Salish Sea long before that happens. So what we're doing is investing to make sure that we do the very best we can. I think it is light years. That's unfair. It's certainly significantly better than ever before, and significantly better than 6 months ago and 3 months ago, partly because of the ozone system that's come online. But, as an example, I had a call yesterday morning, and this is the stuff that happens everywhere. I had a call that there was a problem in one of our new chillers. So the electrician had to get there, as did the person who installed the new chiller, to find out what the power problem was in one of those two chillers. Now, he figured it out within an hour, sent me 10 photographs of exactly what the problem was. They put a bypass in, so that chiller was up and running again 2 or 3 hours after it had gone down. And the long-term fix will be when we get it one new little part over the next couple of weeks. But meanwhile, it's up and running. That stuff happens every day in one form or another. So is it always the same? No. It's a dynamic system, both because of nature, because of what goes on in the bay, and because it's mechanical. And mechanical stuff breaks, even new stuff. You got to fix it every day. So that's it. Now, we also have, both from the Miami Seaquarium and ourselves, people who go in and test the water every single day for all of the parameters. And if something's off, they try to tweak the system. If you've got an old system, you can get freshwater egress into a saltwater system. That's going to impact your salinity. So you want to make sure anything that's allowing freshwater egress from an old valve or what have you somewhere in that system gets either bypassed or fixed. And some of this stuff is old. So you want to be real careful changing a valve, taking it out. You don't want it to break. It's all a balancing act, as I said earlier. And that's the reality of messing around with this system. So why would you do it? Because she's there. And because you have to. And you should. So that's why why would we invest in an old system that's not going to serve her for long? Because you need to do that now to make sure her water quality, her life support system is the highest quality it can be for as long as she's there.
Thanks, Charles. And a few questions about Lee, but I don't want to skip over, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but what's he thinking about the stretcher? Is he interested in it at all? Is he impacted by it at all?
I haven't asked him.
Well, can we call him?
Okay, so good question. Lee is Lee. I mean, Lee is the most energetic, crazy, popular, happy little whale you ever see. I mean, I don't know whether he's happy. I mean, that's just nuts. But that's anthropomorphizing in a way you can't. But you can't but love Lee, because Lee is just this active, energetic whale. Now, he's also, for a white-sided dolphin, he is, not a spring chicken. He's roughly 40 years old, been there a long time. And he too is not perfect health. But two things. First of all, Lee is separate from Toki in terms of who has oversight over him and the like. So while we do, certainly Toki is still in the custody of the Dolphin Company. We are there as their guests. We are there as partners to work with them. We have not, we do not have independent oversight over Toki. We certainly don't have that with Lee. Lee is still very much an animal that they care for in every way. And we are not doing the same, but she's in the environment. So all of the trainers who are working with Toki work with her, similarly vets and the like. Lee sees everything that's going on the same way. I don't think he pays the same attention that Toki does to everything else. They're different. I mean, a white-sided dolphin and an orca are different in the way they engage with their environment and the like. So they're just different species, different beings. He's doing well. He has had some pock marks on his body, and very much those have to do with when he, from what the trainers who have looked at him and been with him for 20 years or so would say, when he's in rut, when he is sexual, his body reacts to that, as does he. And that happens annually with him, and often in the summer months. So that's part of what you're seeing with him at this time as well. So all of those issues have to do with how they interact with one another and so forth. Some people have postulated that they have no relationship. Others say, well, look at them. They're playing together. They clearly have a relationship. Different people see things differently, have different opinions about how that is. We think that they do have a strong relationship to each other, and that's certainly something that's really important. Now, his mate, Loki, is in a different part of the park, and their offspring, Sk'aliCh'elh, is with Loki. So he's now 5 years old. There are issues about, well, should he be moved somewhere else at this point, no longer be with his mother in the same way? They're different in the way orcas stay with their families the same way. White-sided dolphins, not so much. So all of those are issues that have to be dealt with by the dolphin company and with our engagement and participation as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. And I could gather by all the information, like you said, there's multiple things going on in different places, in different areas at the same time. So I think this question is probably an up in the air answer, but I would be, I don't think people would be very happy with me if I didn't ask, but there's been some, 18 to 24 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months. I have to ask because, I just have to. Any ideas, Charles, what you guys are looking at as far as time frame to get her home?
What I think is the most appropriate and honest answer is as expeditiously as possible, as fast as humanly possible. I think that's the best answer. That answer satisfies no one. It doesn't satisfy Jim Irsay. It doesn't satisfy Eduardo Albor. It doesn't satisfy Pritam Singh. It doesn't satisfy me, and it doesn't satisfy any of you. But I do think that's the most honest answer I can give, and we can give. So 24 months is way out of what it should be. 3 months is way too fast. But there are so many variables, as we've already talked about today, that I think anything more than as expeditiously as possible is not being as straightforward as we have to be. Because no matter what anyone says, they're going to be proven wrong. And I don't want to, this is as much setting up expectations and managing expectations as it is anything else. So I try to tell you what I know and what I don't know. And there's more that I don't know than I do.
We really appreciate everything you're sharing with us. We really appreciate. People are, I don't know what happened there, but we really appreciate you coming on here, Howard. I'm gonna and we kind of do what we want, but I want to be respectful of Charles's time. in the hour mark. Howard, is there anything you want to say or ask that we didn't ask? You're on mute.
Which is
Well, I might
very
as well.
unusual.
Sorry.
Which is very unusual for you to be on
For
mute.
me to, yeah, but probably appropriate for now because I don't
never
have any
appropriate.
further.
No, I didn't say that.
Right, but I would speak up if I had anything more to say or to ask. Really, this has just been so informative and so helpful and encouraging. I really appreciate your completeness, your thoroughness in going through everything that you or we can think of to ask you about. And I think you've covered, all my concerns. I mean, I would, I would have my own recommendations. I think the acoustic work is really critical for understanding her ability to communicate, but that's a touchy subject because that sort of verges on the question of release or, somehow communicating with her family. And we, strategically don't want to talk about that right now. So, okay, I can understand that. But I think I think it would be informative even for the agencies that have that hesitation for their
Well,
educational purpose.
you're
And
right. I mean, and we will do that. I mean, that's goes without saying. The fact that this isn't about release in that sense does not take away from the importance to deal with her hearing, acoustics, what sounds she emits, what sounds she responds to. All of that is equally important without regard to the nature and structure of the permit. So we agree completely.
I would like to also add a grandiose theme, which is that we sadly lost Roger Payne in the last couple of weeks. And he was a board member of Friends of Toki, of course. And he is known for having publicized, brought to the attention of the world that humpbacks sing songs. And he was sort of a musicologist himself. So he described humpbacks songs in terms of music, and that was a revelation, that was a whole new quantum leap in people's appreciation and understanding of whales, and very much propelled the Save the Whale movement in the late 60s, early 70s. And I don't want to draw a direct parallel, but I feel like Toki's ability to still to this day converse with her family would open up a whole realm of the lives of orcas to people that would, I think, cause some new understanding of their abilities and of her abilities. I mean, it would be a general natural history education about orcas, but also specifically about her after 53 years separated from her family, except for the 10 years with Hugo, would I think would really be amazing to people and would generate so much more public interest and support for her. So that's just my editorial comment. It does not need a response, but I just
thank you for that. I just did put into the chat. There's an NPR segment on Roger that is really well done. So I just put a link to that in the chat for everyone. Roger, very close friend of so many of us, and a lot of you may not realize he lived 100 yards for the last 20 years from Pridham in Vermont, from Pridham Singh, and has been there. And when I was last at Pridham's home, I visited with Howard about a month ago, and with Roger about less than a month ago. I'd been very ill for quite a while, but just a remarkable scientist and contributor to all of this work over so many years. So that's worth looking at on the link that I just mentioned.
Thanks, and I'm getting that put up on the chat there on Facebook too, so folks will be able to
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's on the private chat. What did I know?
It's already on Facebook.
Oh, look at you, Deb Cruz is on it. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, what I would just say in closing, I'm going to jump off, but what we will do as soon as we possibly can is be that much more open about all of this. I mean, it's nice to be able to share it with all of you, close-knit family, but we need to be sharing it with everyone, and we will as soon as we can deal with some of these strange agencies that are also part and parcel of all of this. So thank you all. You're the ones who have made this possible, not us, but all of you, and that's certainly the case going forward. We're just the ones who happen to be in the spot to do some of the work at the moment. But it's all of you who've been doing it for so long, and all of the work and good wishes and prayers that you bring to it that make it possible. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. We appreciate you being on here. Everybody, you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next week.